Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Here finally, at long last, with my review for Wind and Truth, written by Brandon Sanderson. Oh boy, I am glad that I took my time to read this mammoth of a book, and I am excited to share my thoughts and impressions with all of you. Now before I do, let me just quickly set up how I'm going to approach this video. For the first part of this review, in order to avoid anyone saying, well, you're just a fan with your rose-tinted lenses looking at Brandy Sanderson's wonderful books, I will first talk about the criticism that has been thrown at this book and what rightfully sticks, and some of the issues that I had with the story while reading it. But then I want to launch into all the things that I thought were absolutely great. I really did enjoy this book, even with its faults. And then I want to theorize. Nope, no fan is going to throw any words of Sanderson at me, or words of Brandon. None of that is going to stop me from enjoying some of my theorizing, because that's just what we as fans do. So, to the glorious footage of Elden Ring, let us begin. So, some of the criticisms that have been thrown at this book. It is incredibly long. I will personally say I think it should have been even longer, but for some of the things that are addressed within this book, yeah, it feels like it kind of goes on overly long. One of the big problems with Wind and Truth is that Sanderson falls afoul of something that plenty of us authors have, where you try to have too many points of view. When I look at Wind and Truth, to me it feels like Sanderson is going back to the end of the Wheel of Time and is trying to redo that ending, make it more grand, more epic, but also more personal. Bring all of the storylines together in a more coherent way, and you can really see him trying. The problem is that with all of the points of view that he throws into Wind and Truth, there are some that we do not get enough of. So Shallan definitely should have gotten way more time and development within this book. We also should have gotten more of Yasna. I would love to have had an entire battle sequence for Zigzil, rather than just simply, well, what is happening as he's trying to lead these people over at the Shattered Plains at Narok, and the issues with logistics. While that is very important, and I absolutely appreciated it, it felt like we needed more. But because we didn't get more to flesh out these characters, as a result, it made the book feel longer than it needed to be. Because Sanderson, if you're not going to commit to these characters and to properly fleshing them out with their points of view within this book, then you shouldn't have had them in there. You could have omitted them and focused way more on the characters who were getting the lion's share of attention, such as Dalinar, Kaladin, Seth, and Renarin and R'Lain. Now, the big problem that a lot of people had with this book was, it's too woke! Oh my! Oh, why on earth is there a gay couple, an interspecies gay couple? Gah! Sanderson, you have betrayed me and my expectations of you! I have already done a video on how stupid this was, and I stand by it. That was a horrible bit of criticism that was lobbed this book's way. I even poked fun saying that no one would complain whatsoever if there was an interspecies relationship of a guy and a gal, and we got that in the book. We had one of the Radiants making out with one of the Parshendi way back in the day before they got betrayed by Honor, and that was pretty cool and kind of nuts and metal. The thing, though, is this, as far as criticism out of that particular corner of the fan base, or of just the critics' corner that actually does stick, is that in terms of what is woke, there was a lot of terminology in this book that did not work. So, for instance, Kaladin is Roshar's very first therapist, and wit is the one who introduces that word. And I am totally fine with that because of who and what wit is and the longer history of the Cosmere. So Kaladin is Roshar's first therapist. Excellent! Then why is he using proper modern therapist terms? I did not like seeing that. I would have loved to have seen Kaladin struggle to find the right words for very large concepts. I think that actually would have helped to illustrate the struggle that he's going through, trying to help Seth and then later Nale and so many others in overcoming their various problems. I think it would have made us enjoy his journey even more as Roshar's first therapist and not just as a spearman, later a herald, trying to also do his side job of listening to people's problems. And within that same vein of just modern terminology that really didn't fit, I did not like, and I know this is just one small instance, but it kind of irked me, I did not like it when Sanderson wrote that the Spren were troubleshooting Adolin's leg in order to give him a proper shard leg. That's a really cool scene. I really enjoyed it. Troubleshooting should not have been the word. You could have described it as that the Spren rapidly tried various iterations in order to find the proper leg that would support Adolin, based off of their own experience over millennia of combat. Yes, that's a little bit longer than just simply saying troubleshooting, but again, these people in an ancient world should not know the word troubleshooting because none of that terminology has been used at all in the other books. Sometimes as authors, we get really caught up in what we're trying to say, and we begin to realize at times that maybe we're being just a little too descriptive. We kind of got to shrink things down, and it's nice to have big modern words or ideas that we can easily sum up in one word or 3 words, maybe 5 words at most, rather than having to write 1 or 2 sentences in order to fully encapsulate what we're trying to say. The problem again is that the way that Sanderson has written the Stormlight Archive is that we get so much of these characters' own culture and language, which is distinct from ours. The word troubleshooting does not fit. Modern therapist terminology does not fit in this world. Yes, it is accurate, but that's not what this world would have said, nor would it know. And so it feels like you break just a little bit of the immersion, and it's just like, yeah, I wouldn't have chosen that word, I wouldn't have said it that way, I wouldn't have chosen that word, and that kind of disrupts the immersion within the story. Now, there's a whole lot of people who did not enjoy this book, again, because it was so big, but when you actually spend some time to follow a lot of these critics trying to process their thoughts about it, it's just so big, what I've come to realize is that a lot of people just aren't big into cosmic fantasy, meaning that we're going beyond just your little kingdom or world or centering on one particular hero. We're talking gods, and not just Greek gods. Oh, we're coming down and we're going to mess around with things. Oh, aren't we so naughty? No, we're talking gods. We're talking beings that can destroy and build entire worlds. We're talking the permutations of the future, various timelines that could be manipulated. We're talking about grand powers that can seize upon a person's soul. We're talking about going into a plane, a universe where everyone's thoughts are manifested. We're talking about going into a spiritual realm and then thinking about death even beyond that and how death can even take down gods. What makes a god? This is huge. And this is something that a lot of people aren't necessarily big into, or if they're not ready for it, it's a lot to be served up. And I do believe that a lot of people, for whatever silly reason, kind of jumped into this book first, rather than taking their time to make their way through the Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, The Rhythm of War, which would have built you up to this point. I think a lot of people honestly did just jump into the last book saying, you know what, that's a lot to read. Let me just quickly read the wiki reviews. Okay, I got it all. I'm just going to jump on it. What? Gods? Cosmere? What the heck? And it's just so overwhelming. And there's loads of other fantasy fans that are just not big into something, or I should say, they're not really into something so big. They're not into this wow, universal, cosmic, whatnot, that really is pretty overwhelming when you stop to think about what you've just read. And so, it's actually okay if there's a load of people that didn't like this book, or even the series in general, because it is cosmic fantasy. And that is a niche genre that isn't for everyone. And so if you find yourself not really enjoying the machinations of gods and of heroes and of the building and destruction of worlds, hey, you know what? I get it. you don't need to worry about me saying, no, you just don't understand. No, I do understand, because again, that is a lot to take in. I have loads of family and friends who have read Sanderson's works, and the Cosmere is sometimes one of those things that gets people to shy away because it is so big. And the Stormlight Archive is not only physically massive from book to book, but with everything that it tries to encapsulate, that tries to encompass and explain and deliver to you on a silver platter. Yeah, it's a lot. It's like having someone try to cram an entire 5-course feast down your gullet all at once. Now, one of my personal criticisms for this book is that we did not get a proper description of the Battle of Narek. We know that Sanderson can write amazing action sequences. You don't believe me? Go read The Way of Kings, go read Words of Radiance, go read Oathbringer. This guy can do it. But when it comes to the second Battle of Narek, it just felt very underwhelming to me, except for those really brief moments where we got to see what this fight looked like, when we actually got into it, what it was like to fight a Thunderclast, what it's like when Moash ambushes the heroes and tries to kill them, what it's like when an entire contingent of listeners is just shoved right up against the wall and the humans have to fake a retreat. There is a lot of cool stuff that's sprinkled throughout. You're like, yes, this is a true, proper desolation. But most of the Battle of Narek is not covered in that kind of detail. Not even close. We just jump around to little snapshot. As a result, we don't get to see what it's like when Radiance and Fused truly duke it out. This is the final desolation. It ends with the entire world, with the exception of 3 different spots: Eritharu, the Azish capital, and the Shattered Plains, being taken over by Odium, who then becomes Retribution. It's just baffling to me that Sanderson would not go into more detail about this massive battle, this central battle that Odium himself is all like, I don't know if I could win this against all the Radiants. I am going to throw nearly all of my Fused at this particular spot and claim the Oathgate at the Shattered Plains. I must take Narek. And this is where he throws the Everstorm. This is where he sends 2 of his 3 Thunderclasts, and he keeps another in reserve just in case, but he has to expend that over in Azimir because Adolin just makes his life so freaking miserable over there. So we get these details that just make the second Battle of Narek sound so amazing. But again, we just get so little. And just as a quick aside, this is one of the reasons why I am going to be making my own little mini tabletop replica of this particular battle, and I want to try it out myself with some of my friends and see what this battle should properly look like. Now, to be fair, there might be 2 reasons why this battle was not so well written, even though we know that Sanderson can do it. Number 1, this book is already super long, and there's a very good chance that he did write it, and his editor said, no way, shave off that extra 100 pages, we are not putting that in. Another possibility is that when you have so many powers of Fused and Knights Radiant all clashing together in this epic battle, that it's very overwhelming to write. And I can speak from experience as I've been working on my series, The Legend of the Ten Lords. When you get to the later books in the series and you have these people whose magic is their imagination, whatever they can imagine, they can create, and they go no bars hold anymore. It is nuts. It's very overwhelming to write and to read. And maybe Sanderson's just like, whew, you know what? Maybe I'm just not quite there yet. We're going to pull back a little bit. And so he gives us actually what those battles should look like with the fights between Seth and the Honor Bearers over in Shinovar, which are excellent fight scenes, absolutely amazing. Once again, Sanderson can write wonderful action sequences when he wants to. So he should have been able to do the Battle of Narek. It's either that he felt too overwhelmed by just how big it is, or his editors are all like, nope, this book is already way too long, cut it back. And though I was actually very fine with with the ending of this book, I do have to address the other major criticism that a lot of people, maybe rightfully, have thrown at this book. And that is, the villain wins. Odium wins. He becomes Retribution. He gets to take over Roshar. He has broken the heroes. And I personally like that. That was actually, within the context of the story, quite logical. It firmly solidifies Taravangian, who's now the new Odium, now Retribution, as one of the most dangerous beings in the entire Cosmere, if not the most vile and dangerous of them all. I like that, and it really brought home the consequences and the stakes that all of these heroes were fighting for. And it leaves you with this sense of hope, because there are still a handful of characters who are in positions to begin undermining Retribution from within Roshar itself. And it begins to set up how all the other stories across the Cosmere are going to begin converging in very unique and interesting ways. So I myself, I enjoyed that. However, I can understand why some people might have been upset about this. For one, the way that Dalinar goes out, unless you are a true fan of Dalinar and you're like, I will follow you to the very end, High Prince of Dads. It might feel like his end is a bit of a cop-out. Yasna, you're just like, oh boy, girl, yes, you were defeated. It's time to pick yourself up. The world is in danger. Shallan's ending really felt like it was just jumping from point to point to point. It didn't flow as smoothly as I would have liked. Seth's resolution, as cathartic as it was, felt rushed. So, yeah, the ending definitely has all different kinds of issues that kind of come together that you're like, you know what, maybe I would be able to accept that if the heroes had actually won, but no, because the heroes lost, all of these little problems with the ending, yeah, I can't overlook them now. And you know what? I feel like that is fair criticism. Again, because I did enjoy the ending. I'm like, you know what? I can overlook some of the mistakes and where Sanderson definitely did not refine the story or the characters as well as he should have. I can overlook that because I really did enjoy the ending. But if you didn't enjoy the ending, it just exacerbates all of the issues that are there. So there you have it. I have spent nearly 20 minutes going over the criticisms and the things that were wrong with this book. Granted, there's a whole lot more, but I honestly found that when I got away from people complaining about this book on the internet and just talked to people face to face, that most people who've read this book absolutely loved it. And to be honest, there is a lot to love. Let me just start off with my personal favorite character out of this book, Adolin. Adolin has an amazing character arc in this book. Going from the son who is angry at his father, and rightfully so, basically going off and throwing a bit of a tantrum by fighting an Azimir without powers, doing his absolute best to prove to the world that he can take on the enemy without radiant abilities. And he can, which is awesome. He proves it. However, he has to learn other things as well. Adolin gets humbled throughout this journey. Adolin suffers, and we get to see him rise. In a small way, he undergoes what Kaladin went through in the previous books, and he himself acknowledges that, but nowhere near the depths of just awfulness and depression that Kaladin sank into. And he manages to rise above it all. And he's just honestly such a good guy. Adolin is the kind of hero that I think a lot of people have really been looking for. If you want to have like your traditional hero that you can absolutely 100% get behind in modern fantasy, Adolin is him. Adolin feels like he stepped right out of the pages of a Lord of the Rings side story. 100%, and I love him for it. This guy is incredible, and I love how he explores an aspect of honor that not even Dalinar himself really gets to, about how it's not about that you are totally bound to your word, to the very letter of the law, but it's about the spirit of the law, and how Adolin can capture that through promises, and that it is our struggle to uphold our promises that really makes us honorable people, not whether or not we hold to the exactness of the words that we pledged. And on top of that, there is a lot of nuance there that should generate a lot of great discussions amongst fans who really analyze Adolin's character arc. Another thing that I absolutely loved about this story is the journey that Seth undergoes. Seth has been one of my favorite characters since the very beginning of The Way of Kings. I've always wanted to know more about him. And yeah, at first it seems a little underwhelming when you get to learn what his backstory is, but holy cow, this kid's been through so much. And as an adult, you feel for him. He's absolutely broken. But his journey with Kaladin is absolutely incredible. And the thing is this, I can get why some people might say that his arc feels incredibly rushed, but the thing is that for Seth, it's very much confirmed that he has always been thinking about this. The journey that he goes on with Kaladin is nothing new. It's only that he's always tried to find some way of shoving away the responsibility. But he's wanted to be free. He's wanted to know what is right. And we've already seen him multiple times throughout the other books show a display of autonomy that terrifies other people. Because if Seth were to actually choose to do something on his own, he would be an indomitable force of will. And that is what happens by the end of this book, that he finally overcomes his fear of choosing, and he is able to finally make choices for himself. And the healing process that he goes through with Kaladin is intense. It's very personal. And as someone who, myself, has dealt with things like depression, and also who has a lot of family members who are autistic and definitely display sometimes some Seth-like qualities, I saw a lot that I could resonate with in this story. And true, yeah, it seems pretty fast because all of this change is happening within 10 days, but it felt like a great culmination of his character nonetheless. And his history is absolutely tragic. This is a man who should be broken, but the moment that you give him understanding, real love, and a friend, this man could become the hero that the entire world needs. And that's actually what he's being set up for. And that's what then makes Kaladin so great by the end of this book, is that Kaladin recognizes that Seth is truly broken. Seth would be the hero that the world needs, but Kaladin's like, no, he needs to heal. Because he's not me. He's like Tien. He is just the boy who was sent to war, rather than the boy who chose to go to war. Seth is a storming hero, but he deserves a rest because you guys broke him so badly. And I already know what it's like to be reforged. I'm going to give him his chance to be reforged. I will be the hero that Roshar needs. And Kaladin then steps into a role that Destiny has been building him towards. One that he could have easily rejected. And that choice is even given to him. But he chooses the really hard path of becoming a herald. And I love that. The way that Seth and Kaladin end up really complementing each other. Kaladin finally gets that catharsis of being there for a younger brother, even though in this case he's actually the younger one. I really, really like that. And it brought Kaladin full circle. And one of the great things about this book is how it's symmetrical to The Way of Kings. It's so dang good. I'm actually getting chills thinking about that. The almost the poetry to the way that Sanderson set up the entire first half of the Stormlight archive is brilliant. And just let me take a moment as well to talk about Dalinar. Holy cow, this man, this amazing, beautiful warlord guy. Oh my gosh, I love the journey that Dalinar goes on. When I saw so many people say there's a whole lot of blustering wind and not a lot of truth in this book, I don't get what's going on, I would ask, did people really pay attention to what they were reading? Maybe you read it too fast. Because I'm so glad that I took the advice that so many people gave me, where they said, please take your time reading this. I'm glad I did, because there's so many things that Dalinar experiences in this book that are absolutely profound. And I had to reread quite a few chapters, especially towards the end, to better understand what Dalinar was grappling with, the conundrums that he was up against, and how his understanding of the truth of the past and his discussions with Naudin, which was awesome to get, all lead him to making a grand sacrifice. A sacrifice that we have not seen in the Cosmere since then. And that was beautiful. And I've said this before in other videos, and I'll say it again here. The ending to the Mistborn trilogy, the original Mistborn trilogy, is one of the few book endings that really moves me to tears. just like the emotions are so strong that I can't help it because it's such a beautiful and fulfilling ending. Dalinar's was not quite on the same level as Vin, Elend, and Sazed, but at least for me, but it resonated. It was glorious. It was beautiful to see this man that honor was right to choose, but he was not yet ready. And when he saw the conundrum that he would be stuck in if he totally took up the power of honor, he made a sacrifice that, again, no other being in the Cosmere has made since Vin. And that was giving up the power and basically forcing Taravangian to make the awful choice of taking it up to prove Dalinar was correct, all in order to save people. And yes, as he said, I'm kicking the can down the road. I'm kicking a problem to the next generation, but they are able to do it. They will be amazing. I can have faith in other people. I am willing to give up that role as a leader, then where I'm completely in control. It's one of my last flaws, my pride and my desire for control. Dalinar is finally able to give it up, and as such, he's able to face a god and basically not verbally slap Taravangian. We haven't seen anything this epic since Kelsier went and punched Ruin. He also punched Preservation. Kelsier so far is so far the leader on the board of who has beaten up a god the most thus far. And I expect that Kelsier is going to continue that tradition. But holy cow, Dalinar was just amazing in this story, and the way that it brings him full circle. And oh my gosh, learning about who on earth Gavilar really was, that absolute piece of trash SOB. I wanted him to die after that prologue, and I am so glad that Seth wiped him out because he deserved it. And when Dalinar comes to learn just how bad of a person Gavilar really was, even though he loved Gavilar dearly, it is amazing to see his personal growth, that he was able to fully accept that in his brother and see the potential for him to become that in himself, which again leads him to giving up the power. Dalinar was absolutely the worthiest person at that time to pick up honor, and he was the right person to do so because he has set the rest of the Cosmere in motion for one grand war, and he has pinned Taravangian down. Oh, I freaking love it! Also, I loved all the interludes with Taravangian. Being able to get more into his mind was an absolute treat, because it is fun to figure out what the perspective of the main villain is. And with Taravangian, we see him growing to become even more of a despot. This need for control, and this willingness to bind himself to laws that he really should have thought this through a little bit better, but he's so terrified of losing out his vision to the other shards, to the other gods of the Cosmere, that he honestly makes a really bad choice in picking up honor. And we can see that. And the book, he himself in the book acknowledges that he made a horrible mistake there at the end, and he curses Dalinar for being right. I absolutely love it. And his war of words, his battle of wits with Yasna was amazing. Oh, the way he tore her down was so good. I remember for my video initially talking about the criticisms that people lobbied over at this book, that a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, Yasna is just so broken up because she got beaten because she was wrong. That's just so dumb. I'm like, no. This, after I've read this now, this was great. Yasna needed to be humbled. When you look back at all the other books, she's always treated as though she's always right. For so many people, they're like, this is woke, this is bad, girl boss nonsense. In this book, you get Yasna being humbled. Yasna has to learn and to grow as a result of her battle of wits and loss to Taravangian, which was brilliant. There was no way that she could beat him other than to accept her own faults, but because Yasna had built herself up over the course of these last 4 books as always being right, the moment that she's proven wrong, even if she was in the right to do those things, and to actually have a moral compass, and to be willing to bend her own will and her own promises for the people that she loved, again, that honestly puts her in the right, but it puts her in the wrong in regards to everything that she projected to the rest of the world. It was a brilliant way of breaking down a character and providing an opportunity for her to actually learn and to grow. Because honestly, I want Yasna to become a better character. I want her to be able to find love. I actually think that she and Wit actually make a pretty interesting couple. I would like to see more of that. And there's no way that Yasna of books 1 through 4, and even through most of 5, could actually be the person that the world needs her to be, or to be anyone who could be in a truly loving and healthy relationship. Taravangian doesn't know yet just how much he helped Yasna out, because by breaking her down, she now has the opportunity to rebuild herself and to come back a far better person. I really, really like seeing that. One of my praises, though, for this book, which is also a little bit of a criticism, is what we get to see of the spiritual realm. It was weird, it was fascinating, and I really, really wish that Sanderson would have just stopped a little bit to just describe more of how this realm operated and how it looked, especially with the mechanics that Shallan and Relaine and Renarin were working with, because that got a little bit weird and confusing, and eventually it just became hard to really realize what the heck is going on. And I feel like Sanderson also checked out a little bit with that. But in regards to some of the more sweeping aspects of the spiritual realm and also the cognitive realm, I really enjoyed what we got. It truly fleshed out something that I thought he might not really be able to do. I really enjoyed the adventures that Dalinar and Navani have through it, and I like where things ended up with Shallan. And I really, really like how she suddenly realized, wait a second, you know what? Like, I've beaten Formless. The dangers that Formless presents to me as an individual will always be there. As she admits to Pattern, like, I'm not healed. I will always have my problems, but I'm getting better at controlling them. And because I'm getting better at controlling them, I now realize that Yatil was taking on was pretending to be Formless this whole time. That was a great reveal, and I like how you get that catharsis of her finally taking down Formless really for good, even though it's not her, by just stabbing the imposter and then turning on Miraz. And the way that she manages to just barely beat him was really good as well. I like that. And then, Shallan meeting Thydakar, it was Kelsier. I loved this. You know, I feel kind of stupid that I didn't realize sooner that the Lord of Scars was Kelsier. I mean, it's obvious. It was right there. I just absolutely missed it. Kelsier's couple of moments in this book are incredible because it sets him up as one of those powerhouses within the Cosmere who you should not underestimate. And it goes to show that Kelsier has really become a very dangerous individual within the Cosmere. Now, personally, I love Kelsier. I love his character, and I'm so excited to see what is done with him. There's a lot of fans who are like, I don't really like Kelsier anymore. He should have just stayed dead. He seems to be like a horrible person who's high on his own power. We're going to see what Sanderson does with Kelsier because, as he said, his story is not done by far. Kelsier has many, many roles and things left to play and to do within the Cosmere, and I am so excited, especially because now we kind of get a little bit of a hint about what the Ghostbloods trilogy is really going to be about, and that's going to be very interesting. And I like the idea of Kelsier having access to all of these different powers and abilities and knowledge, even though he himself can't quite wield them because he's missing his string. He's still looking for the ability to get off of Scadrial. He is not a truly autonomous individual anymore like he once was. Though he may have a body back, it's not yet to the point where he can be the agent that he needs to be in order to go out into the Cosmere and go up against the enemies that are threatening his homeworld. And so we get to see some of that desperation, that connivingness, that resourcefulness that we've come to love and appreciate about Kelsier in this book, and he's hardly in it. It's a great way for Sanderson to begin bringing the Cosmere together around the conflict on Roshar, as well as wink and nod to his dutiful fans who are eagerly awaiting the next Mistborn series to be like, I have not forgotten about Mistborn, and I've not forgotten about Kelsier, We are getting to him, and I'm just really, really excited to see that. And I just love, again, the descriptions for these characters. And this comes back to my previous critique about why is something like troubleshooting or modern modern therapist terms in this book when we get to see how Sanderson, again, has these characters on Roshar describe a guy like Kelsier in their own way and language, which is nothing like how we would describe him over in Mistborn. And that's, again, just because the world of Roshar does not have any reference at all to the world of Scadrial, unlike us in the real modern world who have knowledge of all these things. And so I really enjoy when Sanderson stays true to the way that the people of Roshar would actually describe and interact with these off-world things. And then there's Lift. Oh boy, Lift is not in this book a whole lot, but I love the development that Lift gets in this book. And then also for her friend, the Emperor Yanagan, oh my gosh, that boy is incredible. I love seeing him just learn and grow and just be such an earnest, good boy who wants to be the best emperor that he can be. And he's so knowledgeable and he's so gracious to other people as well. He's the perfect good boy. He and Adolin make an absolutely amazing pair, and I love the positivity that comes out of everyone else when these two are together. It's so dang good. And I also have to say I enjoyed what we got of the heralds, the reveals about who the heralds were in certain cases, like with Shallan's mother being a herald and her insanity. Holy cow, I was not expecting that. And with Nale beginning to heal just a little bit, and Ishar and his insanity, that was heartbreaking. It was angering and it was heartbreaking at the same time. Sanderson nailed these characters perfectly, and he also managed to capture so much emotion and personality so well throughout this book. Again, I really do feel that Wind and Truth is kind of his way of going back to A Memory of Light and trying to do a far better job than he did years ago. And I think to a large degree he succeeded. Just once again, in order to capture so many points of view throughout this book, he really needed to actually make the book longer. Now, with me having said all of this stuff, I've gone over the criticisms, some things I've liked the most. Let's talk about theories, because I definitely have some theories. And again, I don't care what the words of Brandon are, what the wobs are in regards to any of this stuff, because I'm just going to tell you guys this. I used to enjoy how much Sanderson would give away of his stories, but then I came to realize he was giving away almost way too much. And there's some people who are so religiously tied to everything that Sanderson has said, who have the entire catalog of every single wob, that the moment that you try to theorize online, people come out of the woodworks to destroy you. And Sanderson, I'm pretty certain, doesn't want any of that. Sanderson just really loves his Cosmere. He loves sharing as many details as he can without giving away too many big spoilers. And the problem is that much information has helped to enable those snootier fans who want to push their glasses all the way up into their brain, be like, well, actually, and it's empowered them to just shut down so many theories. For the longest time, I actually took a massive step back from the Stormlight fanbase and from the Mistborn fanbase, because I would try to engage in discussions and in theories, and I would get smashed down every single time, and there would always be 2 or 3 people who would be like, well, you see, in this wob, and then in this wob, and in this wob, and then in this wob, haven't you been following the words of Brandon? And it's just, oh my gosh, that's annoying. So no, for this theory part, I am not paying any reference to any of the new or fresh wobs whatsoever. I'm only going off of what I know in the books, because that is the way that a proper theorist should do things. I mean, yes, I know for stuff like when I talk about Deltarune, I pull from outside sources and all that good whatnot. But when you're dealing with the Cosmere and there are literally thousands of wobs, no, I am not going to spend days upon days upon days researching through the wobs in order to find out if my one little rinky-dink theory holds any merit. No, I'm just going to throw it out here into the ether, have fun with it, and then I will find out if I'm right or wrong when that book eventually comes out. Alright, so first theory, like the degenerate that I am, is a shipping one. And that is that Kaladin and Syl are going to get together. I mean, they already are together, but I'm talking romantically here. Why do I bring this up? Well, because Ishar has been working on making the Spren truly physical, and throughout this entire book, without Ishar's influence, Syl started becoming way more physical. And by the end of the book, Syl basically becomes the queen or princess of her people. Truly, she actually transforms once the Stormfather is annihilated. And Kaladin has now stepped up into the position that Jezrien had, or Jezrien, however you want to say his name, where he is the Herald of Kings. He is a herald. He is now immortal. He will live, presumably, as long as Syl. You know what? Prime circumstances for these two to get together. And you know what? They're hanging out in a nice, beautiful cognitive bubble where they don't have to worry about being tortured by Retribution's fused. And so you know what? That is A-okay. That is all great. And I look forward to seeing Kaladin and Syl get together. This was actually my dark horse ship throughout the entirety of the series, because I'm like, it's never going to happen, but I think they're really cute together. And now at the end of the 5th book, I'm like, oh my gosh, they are going to get together. Woo, Sanderson, you dog. You sly dog, you. Here's my next theory. Without access to Stormlight, it seems as though the Oath Gates will not work at all. However, as we've learned throughout the Cosmere, Investiture can be used in all different kinds of ways. And we have a Ferrochemist who captured Vasher in order to steal his breaths because it's still a form of investiture. His breaths are incredibly powerful if you know how to utilize them. There's a very good chance that Shallan will be able to get other forms of powerful investiture in order to activate one of the Oath Gates and then come back into Roshar. That's what I fully expect. As Shallan is a pseudo-member of the Ghostbloods, an ex-member of the Ghostbloods, as a Lightweaver, as a scholar, as someone who wishes to know more about the Cosmere. Even though she is stranded in the cognitive realm, she has been put into an excellent situation in order to learn more, to explore connections to other worlds, and gain new powers and insights that really might help her out. And even though she and Kelsier are at odds against each other, they had a civil dialogue together. I'm pretty certain that Shallan is going to reach out to the Lord of Scars once again, and is going to be all like, hey, I've learned some stuff. Are you willing to trade? And Kelsier might be like, you know what, little girl, little knife? You know what? I'll work with you on this. I can see some benefit in it for me. And I think that we're going to see a begrudging friendship or alliance between Shallan and Kelsier slowly grow over time, and that again she's going to use other forms of investiture to activate an Oathgate and come back onto Roshar, which is going to be very dangerous to someone like Retribution, because you'd be like, oh no, the other powers can now get to me through the cognitive realm. It is an open back door. And my third theory is this. There's plenty of other things I could speculate on, but this video's already gone long enough. My third theory is that Ba-Addo-Mishram is going to try to steal Retribution's pool. She has a connection to Odium that she can exploit. And by the Parshendi now understanding the rhythm of war, I think that they are going to be able to more easily access Retribution's power. And this is what she's going to use in order to try to overthrow Taravangian. And I think it's one of the reasons why he's unable to see her, is because she's using a bit of his own power against him. It's like trying to spot someone that you're like, okay, I'm trying to spot this other person in the crowd, and they're really pretending to be you. I know it seems kind of weird to put it up that way, because wouldn't you be able to recognize yourself? Maybe you wouldn't. And I think that that's what's throwing Taravangian off, as he's trying to find this Unmade, as she's now free and running amok once again. And even though she is being built up as someone who could challenge him and overthrow him, as Dalinar learned through Tanavas's memories, and I think what's being also pretty well built up by other interactions with Ba-Addo-Mishram is that she is incapable of truly overthrowing one of the shards. And if she did, she would only become as bad as one of them. The thing is not to allow Ba'at Mishram to overthrow Retribution. She needs to be saved or destroyed, one or the other, because just letting her run free is not good really for anyone, and she is going to try to get to Retribution's pool. And I think actually this kind of helps to spin off another theory, which I know I said this would be the last one, but since I already touched on a little bit on it, might as well go the whole hog. Sanderson has set up a confrontation between Sazed and Taravangian. It is going to be incredible, because Sazed is very, very smart and powered by 2 shards, just as Taravangian is. He is the perfect foil in many ways to Taravangian, where Taravangian has always been incredibly selfish since the beginning, and on to this point of now being a god, Sazed was not. And this plays in beautifully to what Preservation thought of, because Mistborn ends, the first trilogy of Mistborn ends with Sazed ascending and becoming a god, becoming the hero of ages. And as it says, becoming a true god, a god for everything and for everyone. Preservation says that he had come up with this plan back when he was smarter. And it's like, okay, then people look at it and say, well, Preservation's plan was for Vin to take up the powers. But as is explained by the Khandra, by the first generation of Khandra, that was never the case. That the true hero of ages was going to be one of their own people. And it ends up being Sazed. And Preservation had this plan. When we think back to what Preservation was dealing with, Preservation, who was the smartest one within the Cosmere, was approached by Honor, by Tanavast, and was asked for assistance to defeat Odium. And Preservation said no, and Honor was like, oh no, if I don't have Preservation's help, there's no way that I can beat Odium on my own without just simply destroying everything. But if we come back to what Honor said, that Preservation, that Lars was the most intelligent person that he had ever known. And is like, this guy's got to be able to come up with something. I think that Preservation did. I think that Preservation looked forward and realized, I will be destroyed. And ruin is going to run rampant. If I want to save this world and the creations that I love, I have to come up with this idea, this plan that's going to save them. But even though I do that, there is a war that is happening throughout the Cosmere. And if any of the other shards turn their attention towards Scadrial, that could mean it's absolute ruin. And Odium will eventually get loose. Honor is breaking. If that agreement between the two of them comes down any kind of way, my world will not be prepared, especially if I'm gone and it's just left to Addie, and Addie will probably have destroyed everything. So how do I save everyone? And going back to secret histories and to the hero of ages, we realize that Lars was talking about grand things on a cosmic scale, about how important the number 16 was and why couldn't other people see it. And they're like, Kelsier's like, but there's 16 Kelsier's like, but there's 8 metals, and Lars is like, yeah, no, there's 16 metals, but that's not what's important. And Kelsier's like, I don't understand. If there's 16 metals, that sounds very, very important. And what Kelsier and the readers could not appreciate at that time is that there's 16 shards. All 16 shards need to be accounted for, and Lars has a plan to undo what the 16 of them did to Adonalsium. And that is to bring back all the powers together in one. But in order to do that, the right person needed to be ascended, holding onto the powers of preservation and ruin, the power of change and the power of restoration, in order to bring all of the shards back together. Sazed is destined to go head-to-head against Retribution, defeat him, or help to defeat him, and bring all the powers of the shards back together. That is Laris's plan. That is Preservation's plan. And that is what this book, at the end of Wind and Truth, has very subtly set up as the war for the Cosmere now begins. So, there you go. That's my review of the criticism, my personal hot takes on some things I didn't like out of the book Wind of Truth. A whole slew of a lot of the things that I really enjoyed. because there's so much to enjoy with this book. It's yes, it's a very dense read, but it's such a good read, and also some of my theories. Whew! So, if you've enjoyed Wind and Truth and you're now looking for the next long book or long book series to read, why don't you give my books a try? You can start off with Knights of Halley Cruise and begin the Legend of the Ten Lords. Yes, I'm no Brandy Sanderson, but I guarantee you're going to have a fun time with this other world and universe where imagination is magic. But if you're just here for the long video and hearing my thoughts on Wind and Truth, hey, thank you so much for being here. Please leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And thank you so much for joining us on this adventure that we call writing, as sometimes we go into the writings of other people, like our favorite Sanderson Senpai. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.